Yo, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the It's Needed podcast, where we discuss real issues involving law enforcement in the community. It's your boy, Ryan Tillman, founder of Breaking Barriers United. And tonight I'm joined by the one and only, oh no, it's the Popo, my light-skinned wonder brother from another mother. AJ, what's good, AJ?
Man, hey, all I'm going to say is I had a root canal yesterday. Hey, it's all bad. We're going to get through this.
You got your Kanye West going on, bro. Through the wire,
hey,
to the limit. Your cheeks is a little swollen. It's all good, baby. Hey, shout out to my boy though, AJ. AJ hit me up early today and was like, I was like, hey bro, we ready for the podcast tonight? And he was like, hey dog, sorry last minute, but your boy had a root canal yesterday. Yeah. And I was like, hey bro, I'm gonna need you to beast through that. I was like, hey dog, I'm gonna need you to beast through that. And so he beasted through it. He here tonight.
I'm gonna need you.
He might be on cloud nine tonight, so it's all good though.
Yeah, if you just ignore me.
I also want to introduce another special guest. This is also like another brother of mine's, my boy Tams. So Tam and I grew up in the same neighborhood. I grew up in Rialto. My boy Tam grew up in Colton. I'll talk a little bit more about how me and Tam know each other. Yeah. Well, actually, I'll talk about it real quick. I got to do something for all of our listeners out there. It is that Christmas season, and in light of the Christmas spirit, I had to go ahead and play something for our listeners. Just in case y'all don't know, this is the Jackson 5. Santa Claus is coming to town.
Classic.
Hey, classic. And on that note, I did want to know, so let's talk. It's Christmas spirit. I love Christmas. Is Christmas one of y'all favorite holidays? What's your favorite holiday?
Probably Christmas.
Christmas?
Probably Christmas. Influx of gifts.
Influx of gifts? Yeah. I kind of go between Christmas and Thanksgiving because, hey, Thanksgiving, greens, beans, potatoes, tomatoes, yams. So I kind of go between both holidays. Yeah. But I do gotta say I love Christmas, man. It's just I be kind of start getting ready for Christmas in like September.
Okay.
So
yeah, you're early get at it.
Don't hate, fellas.
I knew it.
I knew it.
Y'all the ones that be angry when y'all walk in the store and see Christmas stuff in September. Y'all be like, I can't believe it. They robbing Halloween. They robbing Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's gotta be the day after Thanksgiving. We good. Hey, let Thanksgiving come on.
Hey, y'all quit hating on baby Jesus, okay?
I love baby Jesus.
I say that?
Oh man. So hey, AJ, what's your favorite Christmas song?
Oh, it's got to be The Temptations, Silent Night. I mean,
hey, I rock with you on that one. Brother got soul there.
Classic.
He kind of throws you off though. If you look at AJ, you be like, that brother ain't got no soul. He look like he line dancing. Nothing against line dancing, y'all. So for our listeners out there, nothing against line dancing. But AJ try to play the part. He'd be line dancing in some Concord J's.
No, I'm with it.
You got a favorite Christmas song, Tam?
You know what? I used to play the saxophone when I was like in junior high. I used to always play Jingle Bell Rock during like the holidays. Yeah, so that's probably it. I ain't really listened to many holiday songs lately. But,
hey, Tam low-key got that saxophone face though. Like
I do.
He just walk in, bro, and he just like smooth.
Hey, I want to say that he can be on the front of the CD.
I feel like I'm robbed a little bit. Bro. You should have told me so you could bring the sax and play me a number.
Man, I can't play nothing now. I don't even know how to play.
Hey, fun fact though, I used to play the sax too though. I just wanted to tell y'all that though. So
what?
I didn't make it that far, but my middle school teacher did allow us to play some juvenile though.
Okay, that's where I stopped playing. Right in middle school.
On the saxophone?
No, we played Back That Thing Up. I mean, that's obviously the censor version, but
you can't play Back That Thing Up on the saxophone.
You can, dog.
Confirmed.
You can, bro.
Money.
Hey, what about Christmas movies? What's your favorite Christmas movie?
Probably Friday After Next.
Oh,
that's a good one.
He did hit me with a hit rock. Curveball. Hey, I could get down with some Friday After Next.
Hey, but it's classic.
What about you, AJ?
What's a good one? Mine would have to be man, that's a hard one. That's a tough one. Probably, I don't know, Home Alone. I feel like Home Alone is a good one.
That's what I was gonna say.
For sure. Top.
I was definitely
he
gonna
was
say
a savage.
Oh, hey,
that's why my favorite. He was savage.
Macaulay Culkin. No, I make my kids. That's like part of their rite of passage to be a kid, bro. It's like, no, you gonna sit down and watch Home Alone.
You gotta see it.
You gonna see this movie.
Somebody come in this house, they ain't gonna leave this house.
Yes, son. You better learn how to light somebody's hand on fire with an iron.
Yeah. By the way, have you seen the Google commercial?
No.
Macaulay Culkin.
I heard about it. I didn't click on it. I gotta watch it.
Oh, I'm slipping.
It's like Macaulay Culkin, like today, is like reenacting. It's good. It's good.
Are you serious? Yeah. See, Home Alone is like a rite of passage. The Christmas movie is. What's my man with the one with Chris Brown though? Chris Breezy. That was one of my favorite movies too. This Christmas
This Christmas was good too.
that was good, man. So
I definitely got to go on the list.
yeah, we're gonna have to do that. So speaking of Christmas, for all of our listeners and viewers out there, we had an ugly Christmas sweater contest last time, Tam.
Okay.
And you would have thought that, I mean, me and AJ being the host, I thought it was gonna come down to me and AJ. I mean, just after, just off top, like I'm like, hey y'all, it's got to come down to me and AJ. We the host. But the Savage was working behind the scenes like he always
Faces
does.
of the podcast.
Yeah. This for the Savage won though. And I'm like surprised. And Savage came with something so basic though, bro. I'm thinking like I had like a detonator vest with lights on it, bro. Yeah. AJ came, with a modeling picture of me from my past, bro. And this fool, the Savage, came in with something basic, bro. Like and something like from Flounders for like the Simpsons.
He ain't just weird. Bro. He like demolished us. Like,
no, it was a poll. You guys took a poll. Or?
He blew us up, bro. I'm actually gonna chalk it up to white privilege.
White privilege. Hashtag that. White privilege.
Now I'm just playing
reinforcements.
Now for our listeners, y'all know that's a joke. This is BBU. Y'all know that's a joke. But I actually bring that up because speaking of current events, moving right along, I actually had something, and then we're gonna start getting into our conversation. I had somebody hit me up today, and it was a really good topic. So there was something that was posted on Facebook that essentially said, I guess there was an officer that stopped somebody, gave him a ticket.
Okay.
Now, there was no race discussed in this topic at all. It was just, there's an officer. I don't know if he gave Billy, did he give a person a ticket?
I think he let them go.
He let him go, actually. Yeah, he let the person go. And so the question was raised or something like that of why did this person stop this guy?
Okay.
So the officer went on Facebook, wrote a letter to basically explain why he pulled this guy over. Now, mind you, no race was brought up at all. Like no race was brought up. We don't know the race of the officer. Okay. We don't know the race of the person he pulled him over. So somebody went in the comment section and said white privilege. Now, me, in my mind, so the question that was posed to me was, why do people automatically start throwing race into a situation like this where we don't even know the race? We don't even know if the guy that he pulled over was black, white, Mexican, Hispanic. We don't even know if the officer was white, black, Mexican, Hispanic. And so that actually was a good question to me. I was like, And so one of my responses to them was, it was pretty, this is the way I feel, and tell me how you feel, Tam. And that's actually going to be good lead into this is, as somebody that wasn't a fan of police officers before I got into it, I truly believe, and I still do believe, that there are some racial issues that are going on in the United States. If I didn't say that, I'd be lying. I've said that before. It's a reality. But to say that everything comes down to race is hard for me to say. And I think what happens sometimes is when we say that everything comes down to being, it's because I'm black, or it's because I'm Latino, it's because I'm white, whatever it may be, I don't care what race it is. When that situation that happens that does involve race, how do we distinguish to actually say, no, this is really a race issue and this is not a race issue? And I think that the propaganda sometimes that's pushed out there sometimes kind of leads me to believe it makes it hard for us to really decide the real issues where this is a race issue and this isn't a race issue. And so my feelings on that was this person just threw out white privilege out there without even knowing all the facts, just to add fuel to a fire that we know is burning hot right now. Yeah. And as being, the founder of BBU and what AJ's doing, oh no, it's a popo, and what you're doing, and we'll talk about who you are, it just makes me feel like we take steps backwards because people only perpetuate a common stereotype without even really knowing if this has had to do anything with race or not. And unfortunately, as police officers, we have a job to do. I pull people over. I give tickets sometimes. And I could tell y'all, I'm not giving tickets based on whether or not a person's black, white, Hispanic, and you know me well enough, Tam. So what are your thoughts on that, Tam?
I mean, I don't really know much, I guess, per se about the exact details of the interaction or what happened. It sounds to me like that goes more towards kind of like the troll culture that we kind of have, and that's been established where, people get online and put anything under any video, you know what I mean? Good, bad, or indifferent. So, I mean, to me, that kind of sounds like that's kind of where it, that's going, or maybe a stereotype that, or a, I guess like an ideal that maybe non-minorities get better treatment by the police.
Okay.
To me, that just seems like that's maybe somebody who's just trolling the situation without any facts.
So do you believe that like people do troll situations just to troll or for likes and views? What's your thought on that, AJ, as you drink that glass of water, fix your Kanye face?
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's coming up. It's a fine line because there is a certain percentage of minorities who have been racially profiled, so they can't help but say or think something like that when they see a post. But then there's also a huge percentage of minorities who haven't experienced something like that, and they say it, to troll, right? So it's a fine line. The only thing with something like that is it could be detrimental to both sides, right? Of course, racism exists in the U.S. Even more so. I don't want to say even more so, but also in policing. So when someone throws that card out there and they say, this is a racial issue, despite knowing all the facts, it hurts that side. It takes away the validity of that side. And then on the flip side of things, there's police officers out there who will read that and go, you know what, this is just proof that racism doesn't exist, because he or she didn't read into the facts of this. So it's a fine line. It's tricky, but when people just throw that out there to throw it out there, they're just looking to get some likes or to get some attention.
I agree, and that's kind of the whole purpose of BBU. And so getting into who Tam is and our relationship, I want all of our listeners to know, and I think our listeners already know, one of the things about BBU is the reason we created BBU was because we wanted a neutral place for people to come and talk from both sides of the spectrum. Okay. Right now, I talk about all the time, I believe things are divided. We have people on the far left and the far right and not enough people in the middle. And so I wanted BBU to be a safe place to talk about the issues that we have in law enforcement in the community. So last time we had one of our special guests, which was Officer Daniels. Officer Daniels is a law enforcement influencer. He's very influential in the law enforcement community, very pro-police guy, really good guy. I mean, I've known him not that long, but through AJ and, just kind of talking to him, he's a really good guy. So we had him on here last time. Okay. But this time I wanted to have somebody different, somebody I trust. I trust you, Tam, because you're a good dude. We've known each other. But I know that just by knowing you as well, that you haven't always had the best interaction with law enforcement as well. And, that's kind of led you to kind of push for law enforcement reform and everything like that. So Tam, so you guys know, like I said, Tam went to school in Colton High School, to be exact. Colton High. I went to Rialto High School. And brief story, I got to tell this story real quick. So Tam played, because you played on that football team too, right? With Alan.
I did.
So Tam played on this football team with this dude named Alan Bradford. I'm gonna throw their names out here. Their names already out there because they already play in the NFL. So if y'all got a problem, come holler at me. I'm just playing, y'all my boys. Love y'all. But so he played on the team with Alan Bradford, Jimmy Smith, and my boy Sharice Wright. And then what was the quarterback's name?
We also had I'm getting
Bradley.
Brad
Sorensen? Brad Sorensen
and his brother Danny Sorensen, who's a safety for the Chiefs now.
Okay, see, I didn't know that. Yeah. So these fools had, what was that? Five cats that went to NFL. Bro, you asked me, that's cheating. I don't care who it is, bro. That is cheating. So I'll never forget. I played football. When I played at Rialto, I was a quarterback. Now, as a quarterback, obviously, my job was to lead my team to victory. Well, that didn't happen the night we played Colton, bro. That didn't happen the night we played Colton. And I'll never forget, dog. I dropped back to pass. And, bro, I got blown up. And I think it was by Allen. It was by AB because AB was the middle linebacker.
Probably was.
So I got blown up, bro. So he hits me, and I'm just trying to create this visual image for y'all. He hits me. I throw like a screen route to my boy Jeremy out on the side, Jay Butters. So Jay Butters was my receiver. So I throw a screen route. As Jay Butters catches this, he gets blown up by, it was either Jimmy or Sharice. I literally remember me and Jeremy looking at each other simultaneously as we both in the air getting blasted. And he had on his face like, dog, so you just gonna set me up like that? And I had on my face like, dog, you just don't see how big Alan Bradford is? This dude look like he's 30 years old, bro, and we like 15.
Grown men,
bro. And then to make matters worse, and I'm gonna bring it up to my homeboy, I won't say his name, but dog, this was the most funniest experience ever. So we're in y'all locker room the day before the game, or the day of the game. We in there getting dressed, and Colton's an older school, so I ain't trying to throw some blows at Colton, but it's an older school. Oh. And so we're in the locker room, dog, and my boy steps in something, bro. So he's like, dog, like, what does that smell like? It smells like crap.
Yeah.
So we look on his cleat, and he had stepped in some crap. So my boy was like, dog, did I just step in human feces?
No.
He was like,
Not a cold nine.
he was like, how grimy is that, bro? Did I just step on human feces?
That's terrible.
And that's when I should have known that was gonna be a long night, bro.
A long night.
So that's just a funny story. But Tam, tell me who you are, man. Tell me what you do. Why you do it. Just let us know a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm a sports attorney who represents athletes. I do some. I've done criminal defense work. I've done, family law, things of that nature. I'm a partner in a small private equity company. And a lot of my passion really just involves, trying to shine a light on different injustices and whatnot, and trying to, ensure that, I guess, people are given a fair shake in whatever it is that they're doing, to the best of my ability. So that's
okay. Now let me ask you, what fuels that? Like what fuel? Where did that lead from? Because obviously, it's not like you grew up, unless you were like, because I didn't grow up wanting to be a cop, and I know AJ, you didn't grow up wanting to be a cop, right? So at some point in the line, we all in our life, when we get our grown man on, we go from playing video games, eating Frosted Flakes with sugar on top. That's right. For another episode. And see, Tam, he shook his head like he already know about it. He's a fan, bro. He's a believer. Yeah. So
what I tell you,
so
it's the only way to eat it.
So we go from that. We go from living at home, and then we got to make a grown man decision of what we're gonna do with our life.
Yeah.
And so obviously, I didn't plan on being a cop. You didn't. I mean, unless you were thinking like early on that you want to be an attorney. Because, and the reason, there is a specific reason I wanted you on here, is because you and I have had conversations before, and correct me if I'm wrong, when I became a police officer and I was still able to talk to you the same way we have before, it might have let you shine the light, or it was the first time you were actually able to have an honest conversation with the police officer. But there's something down the line that kind of makes you realize the injustices by law enforcement. So tell me what fuels that passion to speak on those issues, because I mean, obviously, it exists. Law enforcement injustice does exist into a certain level, but not everybody speaks out about it. Some people just hear about it and they're just like, okay, whatever. So what makes you want to, obviously be a voice, and what are some of the things, if you've ever had any bad experiences with law enforcement, what led to that? I
mean, I think that the motivation behind why I guess speak up at times, or shine light on different injustices, really is not really for myself. I mean? It's for like kids, people who are, maybe, the youth who aren't necessarily as equipped as I am. Like, I get pulled over, I'm giving my bar card to the police officer. My encounter's probably completely different than most people, my age and ethnicity, when they're pulled over. I mean, that may be that may be assuming a little bit, but I think that the whole purpose behind it is really just to teach, you know what I mean? Just to show people that, there's a way in which to go about, I guess, asserting your rights, and at the same time remaining compliant, you know what I mean? So that not only you, but the police, everybody makes it out of this encounter alive, you know what I mean? So that you can figure out, kind of, I guess, like I always tell people, you don't want to fight a police encounter on the side of the road. You want to fight that police encounter in a courtroom. You know what I mean? So it's really just to teach, you know what I mean? It's really just to show people, some of the things that they should or shouldn't do, to just try and keep people here. Because again, I mean, it's real selfless, because I know that there's really not going to be an encounter with police where I'm going to be, I'm going to have an issue.
And so you touched on something, and AJ, correct me if I'm wrong, you touched on something right now that I think us as police officers, at least me, and I always tell this to people in my presentations, is the time to fight a situation of why you've been stopped is not the time with a stop.
No.
And I think sometimes people get confused and say, no, at this time, I'm not going to allow this person to assert himself over me.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. There have been I know for a fact there are some officers out there that have probably been disrespectful to people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But unfortunately, the time to argue is not the time of the stop. And I agree with that 100%, because, as at the end of the day, police officers are human beings, and there may be a time where you may not get that good, righteous officer. So tell me why you tell people why it's not the time to fight or argue with an officer at the time of the stop.
I mean, because it's dangerous. You know what I mean? First and foremost, a lot of times, I think a lot of police encounters that turn, I'd say, like tragic or turn fatal, you know, oftentimes where you have somebody, let's say, who's unarmed. You know what I mean? A lot of times I think that it's just, it's a whole, I guess, like, it's a whole plethora of like energy, you know, whether it be somebody being nervous because they're being pulled over or anxious because they think they need to somehow fight their case, you know what I mean, on the side of the road. And then that may, you know, display some type of physical movement that then may in turn, you know what I mean, put a police officer on the defensive, which they may rightfully feel like something's up. You know what I mean? It's just a lot that goes into you trying to quarterback your own criminal defense on the side of the road. You know what I mean? You're better off, you know, being arrested is not indicative of guilt. So you're better off just getting arrested, you know what I mean? If that's the way the night's going to go, and trying to fight it, you know, later on down the line.
Well, that's crazy. And I've never heard it from that point, is you're better off getting arrested than, and I've honestly never heard that, but it actually kind of makes sense to me because, and what I mean by that is if you want to argue with someone, you know what it is, and it sucks. I hope nobody has to ever be falsely arrested, but does it occur? It does, unfortunately. Definitely. Not as much as I think people think it does, but it happens. But it has to, yeah. But you're right. And what are your thoughts on that, AJ?
Yeah, absolutely. So something I wanted to point out first and foremost that Tam said when he was addressing why he does what he does is he said that he wants to make sure that both parties get out of the situation alive. And that alone just shows you the severity of these situations and where they could go. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said it. There's a time and a place. It may be hard, but set your pride aside. You know, if you feel like you are being harassed, or if you feel like you were getting pulled over for X, Y, and Z, unless you feel like your life is in danger, on the side of the road is not the place or the time.
I love that. And one thing I want to point out too, and I don't think you guys, well, I know you guys do, but our listeners and our viewers, I don't think you guys understand the power. And this is not just me trying to advertise, you know, It's Needed Podcast or BBU. But I don't think people understand the power of this platform. So Tam, AJ, and I are able to have a civilized, fun conversation about real issues. Yeah. And there's so much, and AJ, you probably can relate to this. There are a lot of police officers out there that will automatically write you off, Tam, because your thought process is different than their thought process. So without even hearing what you have to say,
for sure,
just based on, you know, maybe following you or seeing some stuff, they would automatically say, you know, I'm not listening to him, because in their mind, and this is true for some, they believe that police officers are all right, do no wrong. Some may be naive to think that there's racism that doesn't exist, or that, you know, racism doesn't exist. Yeah. And so from that platform, they wouldn't even want to hear you or have a conversation. Now, on the flip side of that, there are community members that would never want to have a conversation with two police officers. Yeah. Because they would just automatically feel like, nope, y'all a popo, y'all a pig. I ain't messing with y'all. I ain't talking to y'all. You know, y'all some snitches. I ain't showing up. But yet we have somebody like Tam, who's a friend of mine, but that can have this civilized conversation. And the reason I highlight that is because that's what BBU is. So last week I posted a video on our Instagram, which was of a deputy, or either a correctional officer or a deputy. I don't know what it was. I don't want to be mistaken. Yeah. But anyways, it was somebody in a correctional facility. There's a guy handcuffed, a black guy handcuffed. Okay. And I don't know what transpired before that. I'm not going to sit here and say there wasn't nothing that transpired. There was probably something that transpired. Okay. The law enforcement official punches this dude square in his face as the dude is handcuffed. I don't care what happened before that situation transpired. Yeah. It did not give that guy the right to punch this guy who's handcuffed in his face. That to me is pure evil. It's somebody taking power into their own hands and unleashing it onto another person. Now, I don't want to negate the fact that this guy, the law enforcement official, is a human being. Okay. I don't want to negate the fact that he probably got pissed off. It's possible the guy spit in his face. And as a man, if we just talk as men, if I wasn't even a police officer, if I was out on the street and somebody spit in my face, I can't say that I wouldn't be trying to fight that cat. Because I'm a man. That's what I do. However, as an officer, we uphold certain standards that I don't care how you feel as a man. I don't care how emotional as you are as a man. You shouldn't hit this dude as handcuffed. And so I actually had a few people that said, well, what's the context before? And I always preach, hey, get context before you start making judgment calls. On that video, I didn't need no context. You're punching a dude square in the face. He's handcuffed. I don't need no context for you to tell me that that is right to do.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I haven't seen the video, but I agree. I mean, the thing is with use of force, I mean, whether it be the police using force or people using force in self-defense, you know, as you know, and as AJ knows, each act has to be defensible. You know what I mean? Each act has to be an assertion of self-defense. So if he had spit on him 5 minutes ago and then he comes back in and punches him, that's not kosher. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not a bona fide use of self-defense or even like a use of force. You know what I mean? So some videos, I don't need to see a full video to see if something appears right.
And I agree 100%. There was a dude where a guy shot somebody in the back a few years ago. I think it was in North or South Carolina. Don't really need to see much on that.
Don't need much.
You know what I mean? What's your opinion on that, AJ?
Yeah, I actually did see the video, and you could tell that the guy realized he messed up as soon as he hit him, because he walked out of the cell, and then his partner immediately said something to the effect of like, "Come on, man! Like, we give you extra trays like every day, and blah blah blah." You could tell they're kind of just like, "Well, hold on, like, you know, let's kind of dust these tracks a little bit." But,
and so, and another thing, something else that they brought up, some of our, and when I say they, I mean, we had some viewers that made comments like, well, he was a correctional officer, not a deputy, and all vice versa. And they're trying to make this distinction between, you know, oh, he's a correctional officer and a deputy. Now, mind you, there is a difference between being a state correctional officer and a sworn police officer. There's a difference. However, to the general eye, to the public, and to even the correctional, I'm sure they uphold some type of oath.
Yeah, for sure.
To do that. So in a sense, we're all one and the same. So to me, it don't freaking matter whether or not you're a correctional officer. It don't matter if you're a police officer. It don't matter if you're a deputy. You have some type of authority to take some man's freedom away because he's in a jail. So it don't give you a right now because all of a sudden you're a correctional officer to punch some dude in the face. We all looked at it the same. And when it comes out at the end of the day, if you have somebody that doesn't know much about law enforcement, I'm sure they're not going to say, oh, this dude was a correctional officer. He's not a police officer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that was one thing I wanted to highlight about that. And the reason I brought that whole point up was because I really want to highlight the fact that this is a safe place.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be here and sit here and act like all police officers are good. But one thing I want to ask you, Tam, is do you think that it's important for like somebody in your shoes? Because I know that you like to highlight the fact that we need some type of reform in criminal justice.
Yeah.
So I don't disagree with that. But do you think there is an importance of somebody of your stature? Because to me, I think you have influence. I know you have influence.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I have influence to a certain extent. AJ does. The Savage does, obviously, because he won the ugly Christmas sweater contest. Yeah, so he got influence. But as people influence, do you think that it is important for us to also post positive stuff from the other side? So for you, that would be showing some positive stuff from law enforcement officers.
Yeah, and I mean, I think sometimes I have. I mean, I posted some things of police officers, you know, doing the right thing. But again, I think like my platform, the platform that I, you know, quasi built, like I said, really is to teach. And I think the only way to teach is to show oftentimes like the negative of the interaction, to show that, okay, even if everything goes completely right, you know what I mean, you could still lose your life. So that just increases the importance of you going about and doing things, even at times when it doesn't feel like it's, you know, the most, the most with you, the assertion of your rights, even if it doesn't feel like that. Sometimes you have to act in a way that's just going to allow you to live past that encounter. You know
I got you.
And I think that sometimes when I see, you know, I'll see certain things and it'll just be so far outside the realm of what I think policing should be. You know what I mean? I'm not a cop, but I look at it as like, you know, there's a standard for everybody. It's a standard for lawyers. If you have a lawyer who's out here, you know what I mean, going around harassing people and filing frivolous lawsuits and things of that nature, eventually the bar is going to get involved. You know, they may have their license, you know, either suspended or they may be disbarred. You know what I mean? There's consequences for the actions of those people. You know what I mean? And I think that oftentimes with police work, I think like those same standards, or at least that same standard of accountability, has to go into practice, because if you don't put some check on law enforcement, then you have a system that, you give people this authority to assert their will over other people. It becomes a slippery slope, because if we don't say anything when we see videos of things like that happening, then it's like, where's the stop point? You know what I mean? How far can this go? And I think that's really, it's more like an assertion of your constitutional rights. And that's what kind of gets me going, is just trying to ensure that everybody is well aware of, the rights that they have, and assert those in a way that is respectful, and effective.
I totally understand. What's your thoughts, AJ?
I think it's important, if you have a platform, to share both sides. And I hate to use the term sides, but it is what it is. And the reason for that is, if you constantly display the wrong that police officers are doing, activity surrounded with law enforcement, then you're going to have officers who see that, and then they're going to have the feeling that they need to defend themselves. So then they're going to do nothing but promote the positive that police officers are doing, and you just continue to drive that that gap between the two, and vice versa, right? Like, you have police officers who are very pro law enforcement, and they're, we're highly trained and we don't do anything wrong, and that's all they promote. Yeah. And then you have minorities or community members who see that, and they're like, well, hold on, we have a voice as well. Let's get what we're doing out there. So communication is key. Like, I don't care like how big your platform is, what your platform is, whether it's social media, whether it's speaking, whether it's you're a teacher, you're a lawyer, you're a cop, whatever. You got to get both of those sides out there, because when you don't, you have the opposite side that feels left out, and they increase their voice, or they try to display their side. So you got to get both of them out there.
One of the coolest things that I saw, so when I posted that video, that was the second time I posted something negative about law enforcement. One of the coolest things that I got from it was I had more police officers saying they need to get rid of this officer. They need to fire him, charge him, than anything. And I even had people that were civilians that said, hey man, I respect the fact that you're putting this negativity out here, and you're not oblivious to say that this stuff doesn't happen. And I think that was what was so cool about it. Cause I had a discussion with some people, and I was like, I'm gonna post it, cause they were like, really, why are you gonna do that? And I was like, cause it needs to be seen. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and act like everything is all kosher in police work. It ain't, you know what I mean? It ain't. So I think that was one of the most cool things to see, is the positive feedback. And my goal would be for civilians to see like, oh, wow, you know what? There are police officers that actually are standing up for what's wrong too. You know what I mean? And me and AJ, we can relate, because we like to do all the dance and stuff. We like to do all the community outreach stuff. But I think it's equally important for civilians to see other officers that are not just solely engaged in doing community outreach, but actually speaking out against what's wrong as well. And I think that was one of the most coolest things about making that post ever. Yeah. So the other thing I want to touch on, the last thing on that note is, and just so our listeners know and our viewers know, so me and Tam and AJ, we when we get on this podcast, it's not like we're not going off a script. Like, we're not, reading down the line, and I don't got everything scripted. No. This is all genuine conversation. You know what I mean? I do have a template off the top, baby. I'm over here spitting hot fire. You know what I mean? Spitting bars. But so we do have a template. And so, as I speak to you, Tam, and as I speak to AJ, a lot of things that I'm saying are just like regular conversation. And I want our listeners to know that I think it's important. So one of the things I remember a while back, and I respected you even more, Tam, about what I'm about to get ready to say, because I realized, like, as motivated as you are about police reform and trying to do things differently in police work, you are still able to take a step back and not be defensive if I give you outlook from a different angle or something. And this is the situation I'm talking about. So there was a while back, I think it was like 6 or 7 months ago. No, as I start talking about Tam, you'll remember it. There was a Las Vegas Metro police officer that was shooting out of his windshield. Tam, you already know what I'm talking about. So he was shooting out of his windshield, and on face value, you're looking like, man, this looks like the straight Wild Wild West. Like, this dude is in a vehicle pursuit. Next thing you know, the officer just pop, 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 like you watching a action movie.
Yeah.
And so I know you made the post on Instagram, and I know your thoughts on it were like, is this what they teach in the academy, shooting from windshields?
Yeah.
And then you said something like, this is why we need to have a longer academy, 2 years and stuff like that. And so I saw that. I was actually sitting in a class and I saw that, and I basically, my response to you was something to the effect of, I did some research on that situation. The guys that they were chasing were 2 murder suspects. Okay. They were actually firing from their vehicle at the officer. So before the officer even pulled his gun out, these guys were firing rounds at this officer as they're driving. So they're firing out of the passenger side vehicle. Not only that, the guys were driving reckless. So they're driving into oncoming traffic, oncoming traffic. And this was at a time of day where there was a lot of service street traffic.
Okay.
So then at one point, the officer makes a decision to pull his gun out of his holster and fire rounds from his windshield at the guys. Now, from that point, when he did that, the guys actually end up getting into a traffic collision. And then the video ends with, I think, with the officer actually taking one of the guy's life, or I don't know, both of them. Okay. There was some fire exchange. And so initially, tell me what your thoughts were when you initially saw that video.
Initially, I mean, I thought it was, I mean, I didn't hear it with the audio when I first got it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It seemed reckless. I mean, mm-hmm. I already have, this I already have a belief that I think the academy should be longer. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I think that just kind of fed into that belief that I had. But when I found out, the information that you gave me, it changed my perspective.
And so, and the reason I bring it is not to put Tam on the spot, because I'm not trying to put you on the spot. But the reason I asked that is because, so as officers, there's a lot of things that we have to consider. And they don't teach us to shoot from a vehicle in the academy. And a lot of police policies say, and I'm not saying 100% because obviously I don't know everybody's police policy, but in our policy, it doesn't recommend shooting from a vehicle, but it doesn't, say we can't.
Yeah.
And the reason it doesn't say we can't is for situations exactly like that. And so as an officer in that situation, now me not being in the situation, but me being in enough situations that are, we would call oh crap moments,
Yeah. Trying to be the police.
You have to, in that, however long that video transpired, you have to make so many rapid decisions. You have to consider, okay, this guy is driving, or these guys are driving recklessly, and there's a lot of people out right now. So me having a family of 5, my wife, 3 kids, in my mind, I'm automatically thinking, what if my wife and kids are out on the street right now as these dudes are just driving in oncoming traffic? So as the officer, he has to think about that. The other thing is, he's shooting at these fools from a moving vehicle. Yeah. And like you said in that comment is, hey, if you shoot from a vehicle, you're less accurate. And your statement is 100% right. Like your accuracy kind of goes out of the window. So if these guys are shooting at the officer and these guys aren't really trained to shoot, just stand still, static, then they also are now causing a threat to the public by them shooting rounds off. So now that's the other thing the officer has to consider. And then he has to consider the threat to his life. And so I think, and again, I can't speak for the officer because I wasn't in the situation, but just putting all those facts together, the officer at that point in time said, okay, this is that moment in policy that they say you shouldn't, but hey, I got to do something. Yeah. So he had to make a decision quickly and say, I got to end this. Now, thankfully it worked. Thankfully he didn't hurt anybody else. And so what I'm getting at is the thing I appreciated about that dialogue that you and I had, which was brief, was the mere fact that you say, I appreciate your perspective on that. I see that differently.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't one of those like, nah, dog, like, nah, bro, these police officers, wild, wild west, I don't care what. Because oftentimes that's how I feel as an officer. That's what we get is I don't care what I tell somebody. They're so against us that they won't even be able to see it. It's like I use this analogy all the time is there's so many people against, Donald Trump, or Barack Obama, presidents in general, people are against them. And I understand it completely.
Yes,
and everybody that understands the issues, 100%. But at the same time, we can't forget that, like, for example, if Donald Trump, or let's say Barack Obama, I use both of them because there's a lot of hate on both sides from both people. Conservatives and liberals, there's a lot of hate on each side. But if both of those people went out tomorrow and fed 2 million homeless children Unfortunately, my belief is that there's people that their negative thoughts are so bad about this person that they wouldn't be able to acknowledge and say, man, this dude, actually fed some homeless children. He's still the devil. And so your perspective to me on that situation gave me even that much more respect for you as my boy, because I'm like, you know what? I know we're not going to see eye to eye on some things, but you still have the courage to see through and say, you know what, I see perspective. So is that kind of what you felt on that situation? Or tell me what made you, or did you just, because that's a common sense, and common sense ain't so common, but tell me about that situation a little bit more.
I mean, to be truthful, when I was posting a lot of videos, a lot of the content I was just grabbing in the morning when I was in a bath. Like I hop in a bath every morning, grab content, take a shower.
Tell me why I just got this image of what's it?
A Rev Run.
A Rev Run, bro.
That's how a lot of that content was coming. But I mean, I'm not really sure as far as that video. I mean, it seemed like it was a little out of the norm, you know what I mean? Until I seen the full context. But I'm super pragmatic. I stick to some things that I believe in, but for the most part, when situations, when information can change how I feel about situations, I let the information change how I feel.
And that's all I like. That to me is important, and you could chime in a second, AJ. But that to me is important because I'm not here to tell anybody, nah, you need to change your viewpoints.
Oh yeah,
like. That's not what my job is to do. God made us equally. He all gave us unique minds and our ability to think for ourselves. And that's what makes every single one of us so powerful. That's what made Martin Luther King so powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Because he had the courage to speak and say what he felt. That's what made Malcolm X so powerful. That's what made Gandhi so powerful. We all have these unique minds and the ability to speak for ourselves. So I applaud Tam in that, but I also applaud him even more so for saying, you know what, I gather information, and if that information I see allows me to change my thought on it, I'll let it change my thought. Where there's some people out there that they won't let them change their thought. Any thoughts on that, AJ?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, you said something about Martin Luther King, and I got to say the quote. Listen, he said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light could do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love could do that. And I think that applies to this situation and a lot going on today, especially with like law enforcement. So to go back with the whole scenario where he was like shooting through the windshield. First off, Tam, I applaud you for being receptive to another viewpoint, because myself, I dealt with something like that during my shooting. I shot through a door.
Oh, wow.
And people were losing their minds. They're like, you shot through a door, like there could have been a baby on the other side and all this and all that. And I'm like, you're right. But at that time, I had no other option. Like, it was do that or not go home.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know what I'm choosing. 10 times
home.
out of 10, right? 100%. Like, I got a family to come home to. So I just applaud you for being receptive to that. And Ryan, I applaud you for having that dialogue. I feel like a lot of times when it comes to law enforcement versus the community versus law enforcement, there's a huge lack of communication and a huge lack of dialogue and trusted dialogue, right? Not just one-sided dialogue or dialogue where you're just listening because you were told to be there, a dialogue that you can actually trust. And Ryan, I've had that happen before too, which is like dope about having this platform. I've had officers reach out to me like, hey, did you see this story about this police officer doing this? You need to get that out there because, we don't stand for that. We need to let the community members know we don't stand for that. And it's just like, all right, bet. Like, that's dope that, like, these police officers are coming to us like, hey, look, you got the community's ear. Like, you need to let them know that we don't stand for this. And it's like, bet, that's dope. Because I do know personally there's a lot of times police officers want to say and want to do these things, but they feel like, A, they're not going to be as receptive and heard, and then 2, they don't have that platform, right? Like a lot of cops, I'll be honest, don't do the whole social media thing. And then you have, people like Ryan and myself, we
black sheeps
all the way there, right? Cannonball, splash, it goes both ways. So absolutely.
So that's a good lead in, Tam. So this is your chance.
Yeah.
So a lot of our following right now is people of law enforcement. We have a lot of law enforcement followers.
Yeah.
This is your chance to tell us how you feel as a civilian, but as a black man, being a civilian. And we're going to get deep in this conversation. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And I'm not really down for the whole politically correctness with this with this podcast, because I think that's what's driving people away from each other, is that everybody wants to be politically correct instead of discussing real issues. So tell me how you feel, so our listeners know about how you feel, because I think you also deserve that right just as much as I deserve to allow you to hear what we're saying. I mean,
I think that, you know, I can only go on what I think, you know what I mean? But I think that we have a problem in this country where black and brown people, especially black people in general, or specifically, are, you know what I mean, targeted and policed at a higher rate than anyone else. You know what I mean? Oftentimes, they find themselves in fatal encounters when they're unarmed more often than any other race. You know what I mean? So I feel like if this was a situation where white kids were coming up dead, you know what I mean, and unarmed often, there would be a full scale change to things. You know what I mean? But I feel like at times, because it's black and brown people, you know what I mean, which unfortunately we've historically been disenfranchised, and our ills have been, you know, often fell on deaf ears. I think that it just, you know, it's one of those things where I don't have a problem with the police. I don't have a negative, you know what I mean, I guess, take on the police, you know what I mean? Because I understand that everybody goes out and does their job, you know what I mean, every day. Like my brother's financial advisor is a cop. My uncle, he was a highway patrolman for 16 years. One of my cousins, he just became a highway patrolman, you know what I mean? So I don't think police want to kill black people, you know what I mean? I just feel like at times, it doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think that's the issue, you know, to me, is, you know, if you have people in hostile conflicts, let's say, you know, people in war who have been giving, you know, rules of engagement of when to do what and when not to do certain things, it just makes me feel like it's a disservice to our community, and to people in general, if you have, you know, aspects or groups within law enforcement or individuals within law enforcement who get away with exertions of their power that is just so, you know, so unbalanced, you know what I mean? Where it's just them inflicting their will on somebody else, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I just, that's kind of like my issue, you know what I mean? My issue is, why are there so many unarmed black kids ending up dead? You know what I mean? And unarmed people in general, you know what I mean? Like, so that's kind of like the onus of where a lot of my questions and concerns come from, you know what I mean? Because I know that at 14 or 15, I wasn't as equipped at 30 as I was then to deal with a police encounter, you know what I mean? That just happens out the blue sometimes for things that I haven't done. So
you know what's funny is we're at a unique place in history right now. And what I'm getting at is, this country came from some very, very, very hateful times. When we talk about slavery, civil rights, you know, acquiring the United States, it came from not our best days. Oh, yeah. And oftentimes, people find themselves being oblivious of where we've come from. Even policing in and of itself has come a long way. Policing in and of itself, really, if we get into the history of it, started for not the rightful reasons. It was really to protect property and things like that from, you know, for basically to protect people's money when it comes down to it. And so then you go to the civil rights movement, and then you see the videos of our family members, and I say ours because we're African American, getting sprayed with fire hoses, getting dogs sent on them. Yeah. You have Emmett Till, who was being dragged because he supposedly flirted with a white woman. Yeah. And they dragged him until his face, you couldn't even look at what his face looked like. And then the person getting off at the end of the day, the people. So we come from a place in history of that. Oh yeah. But then we have people that, and I'm not even just saying black people, but we have black people, white people, all races that don't know the history of that. So, and I'll speak specifically to officers. They don't know the history of that. Yeah. So they automatically assume that when we bring up, and when I say we, meaning black people, bring up issues of race, We're just saying, oh, it's because I'm black, not knowing the history, the historical context of where certain things have come from.
Yeah.
Now, my dad and my mom, they were very, they influenced me a lot to know my history and where we come from. But then at some point, and this is my personal opinion, one, I think we have to educate people, and we're doing that now with what's it called, restorative justice practices and things like that, implicit bias training. So we're doing that with officers. So that's good.
Yeah.
But at some point, as a society on a whole, we have to be able to draw a line and say, okay, how are we going to move forward? Because, and the great thing about it is we have a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but there are cops that are old school. They have that old school mentality. Yeah. They were in a time where law enforcement was at one of its worst times, where they stop people. They don't care who you were. They beat you up. But then they got new school like me and AJ, who can see both sides. Yeah. And so at some point, what I'm trying to say is at some point we have to draw the line. And so I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying as far as where your frustrations come. But I think it's equally important for our law enforcement listeners to understand is that there is a hurt and pain that is attached to every single encounter that law enforcement have with minorities, in a sense. Yeah. Now, the last thing I'm going to say, and AJ, I'm going to let you chime in, is yes, I do believe that there's racial profiling that has existed, that it does exist, unfortunately, and it's wrong. It's against the law. It's unlawful. So that exists. But I think also, I truly, and this is my personal opinion, I believe, and the reason this is my personal opinion is not just based on mere perception, but is based on facts because it happened to me. Okay. I think the media perpetuates a narrative to make things seem more out of proportion than what they really are. And what I mean by that is, as a police officer patrolling in my streets, and knowing some of my partners, we don't patrol based on race. And I can honestly tell you that because I've seen, now obviously I can't get in my partner's head and say, oh, this dude pulled this dude over because he's black or Mexican or anything like that. But I can just know based on interactions when I'm talking to him, oh man, this dude, had this violation or whatever. So I just see it differently. So I can't always say that, if we're talking about, proportionally, that things are out of whack when it comes to black people, white people, Asian people, and stuff like that. Because I know that if we look at the statistics, statistically speaking, there's a lot of white people that are killed at the hands of police officers. If we're looking statistically, now proportionally, that's differently. Exactly. I get that. Proportionally is differently. But there are a lot of white people that kill white people. There are a lot of black people that kill black people. And so the last thing I'm going to say is that I agree with you, Tam. I think if we get down to the proportions and ratios and all that other stuff, I do believe that in some parts of the country, black people, I can say this by mere matter of fact that black people are targeted, and proof of that was that chief getting arrested a couple weeks ago for targeting black people and arresting them. So that is a fact. But I do think at some point as civilians, and me taking my badge off now as a civilian, we have to be able to hold civilians accountable too. We can't chalk everything up to I'm being targeted, because I do truly believe, and I know this, that I've stopped people and they automatically want to start throwing stuff out there, and this has nothing to do with race. Like these dudes, could have shot somebody or they robbed a store, and then they want to say, oh, I'm targeting you because, like, no, bro, like. So at what point do we say, as officers, we need to hold our officers accountable? And at what point do we say civilians, we need to hold your civilians accountable too? AJ, thoughts on that before I give it back to Tam?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I've said this before. I think that there's a certain percentage of individuals who think that everything that happens to them is because of their race. And then on the flip side of that, I think that there's a good percentage of individuals who think that racism isn't an issue at all. Like it's just not real. And neither one of those are the majority, right? Like each one of those is a very small percentage of the overall population. Yeah. But I also think that it's important to realize that in my grandmother's lifetime, like she couldn't drink from the same water fountain as someone of the opposite race, right? Like that's how close these things were. But I also think that it's important to realize that we're not in those times anymore. And it's a hard balancing act, but we each have to take a step, right? Like we can't live today thinking, you know what, like my grandmother couldn't drink from the same water fountain, and you're going to talk to me like racism doesn't exist. And we also can't live today like, you know what, racism isn't real and it's an issue that doesn't need to be addressed. Like we we have two ears and one mouth for a reason, right? We need to listen to what's going on, take a step. And that's from both sides. And I get it. Ultimately, a life is at risk. You know, when Tam was explaining earlier why he does what he does, he didn't say it was because he doesn't want someone's rights violated. He didn't say it was because he doesn't want somebody to get in a fight or to get wrongfully arrested. He said it's because he wants both parties to come out alive. That's deep. Like this is much deeper than someone being wrongfully arrested or someone being pulled over because they're black. Like we're talking about someone's life, a dad, a mom, a brother, a cousin, a sister, you name it, right? So it's just important to keep those in mind. And this dialogue does it, right? Like we have listeners from all over the world. It's important for them to hear what's going on. Because if you ask me, from what I've seen, I would say it's more of a cultural issue than it is a race issue. I would say you have a lot of police officers who come from small towns and they go to the inner city and they're not used to that culture, and they immediately are on the fence, right? Like, well, why are they yelling, or why are they so animated, and why are their hands waving? You know, I feel like I'm being threatened right now, and that's how things escalate more so than it is a race. Now, don't get me wrong, there are definitely race-related issues, but I feel like in today's times, a majority of the things that we see on TV stem from a cultural misunderstanding or a lack of cultural understanding.
And you know, it's funny. I had a friend really briefly. He came out here. He actually became a police officer, but he's from Hawaii. And the only thing he knew about LA was the Rodney King riots. And this is like recently, like, you know, last 4 or 5 years. So he was like, man, when I came to California, I thought it was like crazy out here. Yeah. And then he was like, when I got here, it was like way different. But that just kind of proves your point as far as culturally being different. If you don't grow up like me and you, and I think what makes you, me, AJ, like so unique in what we do is we've grown up in inner cities.
Oh yeah.
But we've made it out of the inner cities.
Yeah.
And that's proof to what you just said, AJ, that we live in a different time. Because think about like with my grandfather, who's 94 years old, who's been on a plantation. Would he have ever been able to do a podcast? Now, granted, technology back in the day, my man would have been on cups, Dixie cups, you know, but would he have ever been able to do a podcast without being punished in certain way? They didn't want black people to read back in the day.
Right.
Definitely. So this to me shows progress. This right here, what we're doing right now shows progress, but we have a long, long way to go.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that, Tam?
You know, I think that, you know, it would be ignorant to say that, you know, every police officer is doing some harm to somebody. You know what I mean? And it would be ignorant to say that every encounter where someone ends up hurt, that the civilian is the person who, you know, precipitated that interaction. You know what I mean? But I just think that, you know, kind of like what AJ said, how, you know, you may have a cop from the suburbs put into an inner city. You know what I mean? But I'm of the opinion that should be on the police department to ensure that the people that we have policing our communities are built to police our communities. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, because oftentimes what happens is that, you know, our culture starts to get criminalized. You know what I mean? Things that we do, I can only speak as a black man, things that we do, you know what I mean? In our culture, they start to criminalize things that are otherwise, you know, innocent actions and behaviors. You start to criminalize it to give police a reason to interact with, you know, those people. So I think that whenever you have somebody who's ill-suited to be in that profession, like everything else, you know, if there's a lawyer who's ill-suited to be a lawyer, he shouldn't be a lawyer, you know?
Hey, I agree 100%. There are people that, and we've talked about it before, there's people that shouldn't be doing this profession.
Exactly.
But here's a solution, and I truly believe this is a solution to it. Well, it's not the solution, but it's one solution. And we're doing it with BBU. And before we move forward, shout out to Breaking Barriers United for sponsoring this podcast, putting it forward. I had to do the sponsor. But the thing that I want to bring up is that we have to change perceptions in minority communities to make this job appealing for them to want to get in and do this job. Because a lot of times, and I see it it's so funny. So when I do my presentations, I don't go in there dressed as a cop. I go in there wearing my Concords, which I just got them. AJ got them too, but I think I rock them a little bit better than he does.
I got mine before him.
Hey, I don't care, bro. I don't care how. And for those of y'all, our listeners that don't know what Concords are, go look them at. They some J's, but I go in there rocking my J's, you know, and they just think that they're there to listen to some random guy talk. one of the first lines out of my mouth is, "Hey y'all, thanks for coming to my presentation. I appreciate it. I'm a police officer by day." Whoa, wait, what? Hey, I'm out here. I'm outro.
Yeah.
Oh, I ain't, because that mindset is, I ain't messing with 5-0. I ain't messing with Popo.
Right.
And then when they start to, but they can't leave obviously because they in a presentation. But when I actually start to peel down those layers, they like, oh wow. Like, so last thing I'm gonna say, because we're gonna move forward to the interrogation room and then wrap this podcast up, is that I had a student Monday. This was Monday. He shared with me a story where police officers just recently took a member of his family, and I'm talking recently, like within the last 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
And he's a black kid. And you can tell he was very distraught about this situation. Now, right, wrong, indifferent, I don't know. I wasn't out there at that situation. But this kid, teenager, had somebody of his family taken at the lives by the hands of police officers.
Okay.
So he is already like standoffish. But then I do my presentation, and then we talk after. He comes up after, and then he sends me a message that night that basically, to sum it up, says, "Man, you changed my thoughts about police officers.
Yeah.
Not only did you change my thoughts, but I would love for you to mentor me. And maybe, if possible, I would want to get into this profession to be a better officer."
Yeah.
That is a conversation I think that needs to happen more.
Okay.
Not just with minorities, but everybody.
Yeah.
Because when we start changing the perception of what it is that we do, because we all know that this is a job that, like it or love it, it needs to be done. There's bad people out there. We need to keep people safe. If we can start changing the perception of getting more people that are turned off by the police to start thinking about this profession differently, I think that is a level of where now we can start peeling back some of these layers and really start changing people that come from inner city communities and now are policing the streets of the inner cities or wherever, and they can relate more, and they're not scared when they roll up on somebody and they think he's about to shoot them. You know what I mean? So that's my 2 cents, and I think that kind of goes into a whole nother topic, which is recruitment and training people better so that way they can pass different things. Any final thoughts on that by any of you guys?
Got it.
No,
Nailed it.
Bam, y'all. So, man, I'm so into this conversation. I don't even, Billy, how far into this are we?
Hour 3.
Oh yeah, so we got to wrap this up, y'all. So I could talk about this all day. Tam, I want to thank you again, but we're not done yet. So I really want to move into the interrogation room really quickly.
Let's do it.
Dun, 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 dun. So Tam,
Dun, dun,
is there
dun.
any question, and I'm putting you on the spot right now, so if not, all good.
Yeah.
Any question that you want to ask me and AJ about police work?
I mean, I guess I have a question, okay, or scenario. If you have a cop that you work with, okay, who does something that is far outside the bounds of what he should do, okay, let's say completely against policy, do you have a responsibility? Do you think, like as let's say a good cop, do you have a responsibility to say something?
Great question, AJ. You answer first, and I'll answer second.
Yeah, 100%, because at the end of the day, what he or she does reflects poorly upon what I represent as a police officer and why I became a police officer. And I know there's a lot of talk about the blue code, or I don't know the exact term of it, but speaking from my personal experiences on my department that I work for, if you do something crazy, hey, I'm going straight to the sergeant. Like, hey, by the way, he did that, not me.
Yeah.
You know about it now. It's your responsibility to keep that moving on up. If you let it die with you, you let it die with you. But, I work too hard to have the voice and the platform that I have to not, because if I seen something on the opposite end, I'll be quick to stand up for it. So I got to do it on this end too. So it's a great question though.
So my answer to that, take the police officer out of this. My job as a Christian man, my moral, my ethics, my belief in Jesus Christ, that's what I have to do. Because the Holy Spirit will convict me like, hey, dog, and the Holy Spirit convicts me all the time. As my wife, I'll be like, dang, babe, I'm sorry. I know, I shouldn't have done that. My bad, baby. My bad. I should have took the trash out. I did. But so the Holy Spirit himself and my values as a Christian man would tell me that yes, it is a duty and obligation for every police officer to say something if they do something wrong. Now, I'm not oblivious to say, because everybody don't have no spiritual background. Exactly. So if we're just talking from a moral and ethical standpoint, 100%. It is a job, and they tell us that it's part of our code, that if I see something that's wrong, whatever it may be, I have a obligation to say something. And going back to culture and tradition within law enforcement, back in the day, there was a code that was like, hey, you don't say nothing. Sun goes down, you don't say nothing. But like I've been saying this since it was funny. I used to say this when I was in middle school, and I don't know why I think I used to say it because my dad used to always say it, but I got bills to pay. You know what I mean? Even though I didn't have no bills in middle school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
thinking about it.
Exactly. I was thinking about them bills. So I got bills to pay. So at the end of the day, if we move beyond a moral and ethical standpoint, if I don't, I'm gonna lose my job. Yeah. So on all three of those levels, spiritual, moral, and ethical, and just by straight flat out, I need to keep my job 100%. It's the right thing to do to say something if you see something that's not done right. So
I feel that. I respect you guys for that.
Yeah. So I got a question for Tam.
Yeah.
So with your current platform and being a man of color in the United States and seeing the issues that go on in policing and being on this podcast where a lot of police officers and law enforcement agencies listen to, what would you tell, or what would your message be if you could say something to all the law enforcement officers in the country?
I mean, I would just ask them to, at times, I guess provide a reason. I guess just lead with more compassion. You know what I mean? Try to treat people right. You don't necessarily have to, like my uncle, he was a highway patrolman for 16 years, never fired his gun. Not saying that, everybody's situations are the same. A situation may exist that causes you to, and it may be completely justified. You know what I mean? And I don't have anything against that. But I guess I would just ask them to lead with just some more compassion. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, nobody's to say that, if you have children, your kids, they may listen to everything that you say, and they may just get caught out one night, and because they're afraid, do something that looks to an officer to be suspicious or culpable, you know what I mean? And they could lose their life. So I just asked them to, take some of those things into consideration, or at least go into better planning, you know what I mean? Or I mean, just do things that I guess, just lead with more compassion. That's really all that's what I'll stick with, just lead with more compassion.
I love it. I love it.
I like it.
Man, Tam, bro, I can't thank you enough, bro. I think, and tell me if you agree, AJ, but we're going to have you on again sometime, bro.
Yeah, most definitely.
Because there's just so much, but there's just so much to talk about. I mean, but for the sake of time, we can't. Last thing I want to end with is, go ahead, AJ.
I know where you're going, but I was going to say I do feel like there's a congrats in order for somebody.
Real quick, Savage over there. So my man, the Savage, is expecting his first baby. So shout out to the Savage, baby Savage, Savage Jr. So we got to get Savage Jr. a set of headphones for his birth. And so if y'all don't know, the Savage gave me permission to wear my red beats today. He last time he was like, "Nah, bro, we ain't having those red beats." So I must have did something right, bro. I got my red beats popping today.
Just so y'all know they weren't working earlier. So
hey, bro, don't talk about my red beats, dog. These studios, son.
Hey.
Last thing I want to do, Mythbusters, baby, Mythbusters. So AJ, hit me with it. So let's just do a scenario. So they're gonna change Mythbusters, Tam, and some. Everybody always thinks officers do or act like certain ways. Stereotypical things. So let's say we're gonna do a scenario right now. You and I, AJ. Okay, so you're the officer. I'm the patron. Okay, we walk into a store. So I see AJ. AJ's walking. He's getting his coffee and donuts because AJ likes donuts.
You walk donuts, right?
Hey, officer.
Hey, how you doing?
I didn't do it. She did it.
Boom, Mythbuster time.
So
no police officer in the United States of America thinks that is funny. None of us. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a restaurant or a store and someone's looked me in the eyes, threw their hands up and said, "It wasn't me, officer." There she is. There he is. Hey, stop.
Hey,
That's not funny.
they be cracking up too, bro. They be like thinking like they were the most original joke ever. Like, oh man, I just dropped a Kevin Hart dime on him. I'm gonna kill him
Oh
with this.
my goodness. We look at him like, can I get my coffee? Like, you stopped me from getting my coffee to say that joke that I've heard 1,000 times. Real quick, one more scenario. Ryan, you the officer. I'm the civilian. Ryan is walking into the store. Boom, boom. I'm going to get my coffee. I got my kid with me. I grab my kid and I go, hey, you see that officer right there? You better be good or I'm going to have him take you to jail.
Happens all the time.
All the time. And no, I'm not taking your kid to jail. That's for your opportunity as a parent to take his butt home and take that belt off. Now, I'm not condoning child abuse, but hey, I'm just saying, it ain't against the law to spank your kids.
It's not against law to spank your kid with a belt.
With a belt. So we'll end on that, fellas. Hey, Tam, thanks again, man. We appreciate you, dog. I really do.
It's a pleasure. AJ, pleasure, man.
AJ, thanks again, bro. Hey, I give you credit, bro. You beasting through that, bro. I might have to have Billy take us out. Maybe not, because on a Kanye West Through the Wire, because because you beasting through that. So.
Hey, I do got to touch on one more thing, and I'm gonna leave this up to my man Tam. If you had to pick between Ryan and myself, who had the nastiest collection of J's, who would it be? And I'm talking quantity and quality, right? So like exclusives, the amount.
AJ, I think I gotta go with AJ. He said he had the Concourse before you.
So I'm gonna have you up in my house. So you're gonna be up in my house. After I done had you up in my home,
he said he had him before you.
He said
he had him before you. Hey, I'm thinking.
So if he had him before me, then that means mine are probably fresher. Just saying. I'll leave y'all on that note.
Okay.
Drop the mic.
That's another way to
get to the bottom of this.
Hey, we'll get to the bottom of that.
Y'all have to post y'all
started our
collection.
investigation. So, hey, to all of our podcast listeners and viewers out there, thank you for tuning into our podcast. We really respect everything that you guys are doing. If you guys like and enjoy this podcast, please go on to iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, whatever it is. Give us a 5-star rating and leave a comment because we love to hear your feedback. Boom, there it is, fellas and ladies. We will see you guys on the next podcast. Thanks again, guys. Take care.
Peace.
Hey, take care.